Here we go. Another stock picks video. These are the picks for the week of September 21st, 2015. All we're going to be using is this beautiful program, stockcharts.com. I'm going to show you how to set it up, and then we will look at 5 stocks. I'm going to include one penny stock so anybody can play. So let's start with MYL. It's going to bring us that chart. I'm going to enlarge it. It's already enlarged. And then we're going to switch to the indicators we care about. First of all, because these are weekly recommendations, I'm going to be lowering the moving averages. And then we're going to be looking at indicators that are good for swing trading. I like the Arun lines, the MACD line, which is already there, and the slow stochastics. Update the chart and we'll get all those indicators. Alright, so we're starting with, and actually all we're going to be looking at today are 5 stocks. No ETFs, no ETNs, nothing on the market in general, because I think those are all pretty iffy at the moment. So let's just stick with stocks that look like they're going to go up in the next week or are oversold. So we're going to start with MYL. And typically when the red Arun line drops below 30, it's somewhat of a signal that it's somewhat of a buying signal. Not always. It usually actually means something more like the momentum has shifted downward for a while, and now you can say it's almost bottomed out. So let's take a look at where we are. We have this huge gap right there, and if you know how to trade gaps, if you've ever taken my gap game plan course, you would have seen this as a breakaway gap, and you probably would have shorted the stock and made a decent amount of money. But we're way beyond that now. This gap really doesn't matter anymore. So what we're looking at are simply these candlesticks. We have a bullish engulfing candlestick, which tends to be bullish. It's called the bullish engulfing for a reason. But more importantly, even though the red MA is above the blue MA, we see that now the price of the stock is actually above the blue MA. And that can be a good buying signal if you want to get in early. If you believe that things are going to shift upward, you want to get in early, that's enough for a moving average buying signal, the price going above the moving average. Usually I would prefer to see it above the red line, but in this case we're swing trading and we're playing more risky than most investors, so that's just a given. Now the MACD line is negative, we don't like that, but we do like this diversion where the stock seems to be going downward and now the MACD line is going upward. That gives us indication that there's a possible reversal in play. The slow stochastics tell us nothing really, but I like this separation of the black and red lines. And also, if you're really interested in the company, I suggest you go to Morningstar and make sure it's a good company if you plan on position trading. And when you position trade, you're going to want to look at the weeklies. And you're probably going to want to switch out some of these indicators. But I think this stock looks pretty good for a weekly swing trade, simply because we have a couple pseudo buying signals, and it's a stock that used to be near the hundreds and is now around 50. So we know the potential for how high it can go. I also looked at type this in here, MYL. I also looked at some of the fundamentals for this stock, and it does look pretty good. MYL, I believe, is in the biotech sector, which is, a lot of people say it's a bubble. I think it might be a bubble. If you look at the price to earnings for the industry as a whole, it's way, way, way higher than most other industries. And when you find a biotech company with low price to earnings, you're either looking at a company that's undervalued or you're looking at a company that has no future prospects. But for a company like this, MYL, they're doing generic drugs, and there's always going to be a market for that. So if the price to earnings is very low compared to the industry average, which it is, this is 24, but the industry is almost 400. In that case, I'm going to say that the indication of a low price to earnings is that this stock is probably undervalued. So I mean, if you look at everything here, it's all pretty good except for revenue growth, but this isn't a company that's doing anything amazing. They're just getting generic drugs. So this might be a good position play as well. But that's MYL. The next one is a consumer product. It's a dish network. You might have heard of it. It's for people who want to install satellite dishes and watch TV in that way instead of generic cable. And we're seeing a very similar pattern with the Arun lines. The red one has dipped below 30. We also see the price has jumped above the blue MA line. So it's exactly the same as what we just saw. And then, just like MYL, we're seeing a negative MACD line begin to turn upward. So it's basically the same play. It's just, pick your poison. Do you want to hold? Do you want when you swing trade? There's always the possibility of holding it longer than you intended to. So when you swing trade a stock and you have two stocks that look pretty much the same in terms of their technicals, look at the fundamentals, look at the company itself, look at their prospects in the future, and think about what you prefer as an investor to put your money in. So if you're bullish on satellite dishes, then go with this. Otherwise, go with the generic drugs because there's always going to be a market for that. All right, the next stock is CMLP. I actually don't remember what these guys do. We could take a quick look though. CMLP. LP, by the way, means balls in Taiwan. Balls. Alright, so the Arun lines aren't telling us much other than we're pretty much at an all-time low. Let's see here. Indeed we are. However, look at the volume on the last trading day. It's way higher than, it dwarfs everything previously. And we're also seeing, we saw a bearish in harami, sorry, a bullish harami candlestick pattern, followed by a confirmation. It's hard to see here, but that's what's happening. Still, the momentum seems downward. If you look at the moving averages, when the red line's on top, you're probably not going to want to be bullish on this stock. What I'm looking at here and why I'm interested in this stock is even though this is going to go down for a while, and it probably still will go down for a while, and if you wanted to position trade this, you would probably be bearish. You would buy puts or you would short the stock. I'm thinking we are pretty much undersold, and I'm not saying to buy this on Monday. I'm saying watch this and look for two things. First, look for this black MACD line to turn upward and cross the red MACD line. When that happens, that's a buying signal. And also, you see how the black stochastics line has crossed over the red. Once that gets above 20, that's also a buying signal. So this is something you'd want to watch next week because what we are probably seeing is a stock that has some sort of news event. That's why the volume shot up. And that occurred at the same time that the stock is oversold. So we're hoping to buy the stock and have that price even out and then get out once it evens out. So look for those buying signals. Look for the black line crossing the 20 and look for the black line here crossing the red and going upward. Those are buying signals. You can get in on that and then watch to see where we hit resistance, then sell the stock. So obviously this is a pure swing trade. This is not a good investment if you look at the long term. I'm going to move on to Fold. Oh, what does CMLP do, by the way? Okay, so yeah, this is a crude oil stock. And oil might be going up a bit in the next week or so, but it's probably still going to be going down for the long term. So you're not going to want to hold on to an oil stock unless you're hedging. Alright, so here's Fold. Another, well, this would be a biotech company probably. Okay. We had a buying signal a while ago. The buying signal occurred when the green line crossed the red line, and another occurred when the green line crossed the the 70 line. Now, although it's headed downward, a rune line does typically do this. They'll go up and they'll head down, up, down, up, down. As long as it doesn't cross the 70 line and stay moving downward, we're going to be safe. And as long as the red line doesn't start moving upward, we're going to be safe. So we already have those buying signals from the rune lines, so we might be getting in too late. But it's probably not the case. If you look at the candlesticks we had, these are weird candlesticks because they're basically all lined up horizontally. So I wouldn't really put too much faith in them, but we did have a bullish engulfing candlestick, and then we had a confirmation of that with a with a Friday where the closing price was higher than the previous closing price. So you can call that a confirmation. But more importantly is the blue MACD line now just crossing the red one. You can see we had a gap there. To me, this looks like an area gap because of the volume and the fact that we're really not outside of the trading region. But we didn't have any confirmation from the candlesticks that this area gap's going to close. It might have just moved us to a new area, and the area gap won't close for a while. If that's the case, this might be a good swing trade. Because looking at the other indicators, we see that the black MACD line is above the red, and they're both in positive territory, which means there's positive momentum, which is pretty obvious if you look at the stock overall. It's been moving upward. My main concern is this area gap, and the reason I'm not concerned about it for the next week, for this week, is that although the stock looked to be oversold or overbought, that black line has now moved below 80, so I believe we are in safe regions. This stock is probably not going to close that gap, at least in the next week, and it's probably going to move upward with that upward momentum in place. So this is more of a risky trade, but I believe we have quite a few buying signals here, and with it being at almost an all-time high, we don't really know where the resistance is. It could be around 19. So even if it hits 19, we still made a bit of a profit. But hopefully it'll break out and move upward. We'll see what happens in the next week. So again, this is probably the riskiest of the trades. Now let's get to the penny stock, which is Plug. Plug right now is looking like the beginnings of a pump and dump. And I'm not really sure in terms of what the company is like for future prospects, but if we do see a pump, and well, if we do see a pump, you should probably look into the company and see if it's a company worth investing in. If it's not a company worth investing in, well, then you're probably going to see a subsequent dump, and after the pump you want to get out. So you want to, just like here, this was a mini pump and dump, but I would say this is more like a gap play. Let's look at the volume. Yeah, but for penny stocks, for any stock that's under $5, when you see gaps like this, it's not typically going to go upward, even if the theory says it will, because a lot of these upward breakouts with penny stocks are pump and dumps. So we got the pump and then the dump. Now, what we're seeing with the candlesticks in the past week, actually, it was successive white candlesticks, each getting longer than the previous. These are signs of a pump. Now, whether this will be dumped later is the question, but at the moment we're moving upward. We've broken the blue line in terms of real price, and we're about to break the red line in terms of real price. The Arun line, just like the first couple stocks, has the down Arun line has dropped below 30, which is a sign that the downward momentum has ended. And the MACD line should be, yep, they are pointing upward with the black above the red, and we are in safe territory with the stochastics. So this is actually a pretty good penny stock if you want to get in on a penny stock swing trade. Just be careful that there's no dump. If you see the stock suddenly dropping, well, you're going to want to sell and get out just like everybody else is doing. Alright, so that's it. I'm going to bring over the stock picks, and you can look at them for a second. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section below.